describe it to the audience.
I had two favorite episodes. One came in the last year and one came early on. One that came in the last year, I got to sing on top of the grand piano in a red spangled dress down at the Rusty Anchor. I got to sing I Want to Be Loved by You, and everything goes wrong. Everything. Blanche, that is, makes a total fool of herself. Well, that was choreographed. I knew a choreographer come in, and we choreographed that thing to within an inch of its life, so it was exactly, precisely timed, and we knew exactly what was going to go wrong and when, you know. And that's a challenge to pull that off and make it look spontaneous, and I really enjoy that. Also, that was a story about, it was a competition between Dorothy and Blanche, who's going to be the queen of the Rusty Anchor, the singing, the reigning queen. And of course, Dorothy could sing and Blanche couldn't. But she was going to take over, and then she doesn't. And she runs to the ladies' room, and she's in tears. She's made a total idiot of herself. And Dorothy follows her, and they make up, and it all turns out well. And the other one that I thought was one of the best written little pieces of comedy was a show where a woman comes, I think she was a friend of Dorothy's, and she comes to visit us and says, stay overnight, stay a few days. And I think Dorothy puts her up in Sophia's bedroom. And so Sophia and Dorothy are sleeping together, and Rose has joined them to talk things over. And Blanche comes in and says, what are y'all doing? We're talking about Jean. Jean was our guest. I said, yeah, what about her? Well, they said, you know, we've discovered that Jean is a lesbian. And Blanche says, a lesbian? Well, what's wrong with that? Danny Thomas is one. And Dorothy says, not Lebanese. Lesbian. 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 Lesbian? And she was outraged. She out the door. We say, well, that's all. This goes off and on.
Use this one.
It says, that's not all. We've also found out that she has a crush on Rose. And Blanche stops at the door, and she comes back into the room, and she says, Rose? Well, what's wrong with me? Isn't that good writing? To go from, you know, being outraged to being insulted, because she was, I just thought that writing was delicious. There were lots of pieces like that. We had the first show of the second year, I remember. You see, Susan Harris created these characters, and she only wrote the pilot, the first show of the first year. Then she didn't write anymore. And then the first show of the second year wasn't working. It wasn't very funny. And they called her back in to doctor it. And she put in a kitchen scene where they're talking around the table, and they're talking about don't ever be on top. Always be on the bottom. Because when you're on top, your face falls forward, everything sags. And Blanche says, well, that's ridiculous. My face never sags. And they say, get a mirror. Someone brings out a hand mirror, and she backs over she leans over the stove with the mirror. She looks down and she says, oh my God. And she finds out it does sag. And so then she leans back and puts the mirror up here. She says, now that's how I want to look. She says, I'll never be on the top again. And that scene saved that show. It did. And that, I think that was the last one Susan Harris wrote. But we had young men writing that show, 13 every season. For me? Thank you. I'll just hold it. 13 every season, different ones, because they were so successful that they would go on and form their own production company. In fact, you know, Desperate Housewives is written by Mark Cherry. He created that, and he was one of our writers. Oh, they were talented fellas. And I said to them one day, how do you boys of 32 know how to write these older women? Well, that was a dumb question. They're writers. And they said, we've got aunts and mothers and grandmothers and, you know, we're writers. We can write every age. So I learned a little something. Plus, most of them were gay.